Hi, good evening, everyone. Today is April 7th, 2026, and this meeting of the Lake Oswego City Council is now called to order. Ms. Hawkins, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Buck.
Here.
Councilor Maboup.
Here.
Councilor Wendland.
Here, sitting.
Councilor Burdick.
Here.
Councilor Corrigan. Here. And Councilor Afkin.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hi, everyone. Will you please stand, remove your hats, and join us in the pledge?
Welcome.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. We have one proclamation tonight, and that is Arab American Heritage Month. We recognize Arab American Heritage Month and celebrate the many contributions of Arab Americans to our community and our country. We also proudly acknowledge Councilor Afgan, the first Arab American to serve on our city council. His leadership reflects the strength and importance of diverse representation. You'll find this proclamation as well as all other proclamations on the city website. And then we have a presentation coming from China, but I'm going to have our public comment go first because Chris and Carrie, it's just the two of you who signed up. So please come forward. And if anyone else would like to provide public comment, please fill out a white form on the back table and bring it to Ms. Hawkins. But it's great to see you too. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, councilors, city manager, and staff. I'm Chris Durkee, 2356 Glenhaven Road in Lake Oswego. I'm accompanied by our co-director, Carrie Love, to give you a quick update on our campaign for bond ballot measure 3635 to fund the new South Shore Fire Station. We have 9 arguments in favor that have been filed in the voter pamphlet. Those are the only arguments, either pro or con, in the voter pamphlet. City Council, thank you. Chamber of Commerce, School Board, our committee, IFF Local. One individual's heartfelt outpouring of appreciation for the first responders that came to her husband's aid. 13 civic organizations, 20 neighborhood associations and HOAs, and 118 individuals. We ran out of room on the letter. We would have had many, many, many more, but 118 was all we could fit in with the word count limit. The county told us that was a record. They'd never seen an argument for or against anything that had that many names on it. So we have presentations. We've given about 20 presentations. We have 6 more coming up that are booked so far, plus a couple of farmers markets and other events.
Yes, thank you for having us this evening. Carrie Love, I live at 17061 Crestview Drive in Lake Oswego, and I am a co-chair of the Lake Oswego Fire Station Rebuild PAC. I've been working a lot on the outreach to the community. I think our biggest challenge is just notifying and getting the information out and educating our residents on the importance of the rebuild of the fire station. We are investing in mailers that will be going into homes right after the ballot in the end of April, as well as May 12th will be our second. And again, that first will just be an educational, telling the need. We're really focusing on reliability of response, as well as community safety, not only for us as residents, but also for our firefighters and paramedics. And then the second mailer, of course, will be return your ballot. So we are in the thick of it, and we're still getting out there in front of people, as Chris has mentioned. We are continuing with our art contest, which was all online. So Mayor Buck, thank you for offering to be a judge for that contest. And we are getting any student in LO, regardless of the school district that you attend, is able to participate, which allows us to get into multiple schools in our district. They've been very helpful. And now you're going to be seeing yard signs, and we're going to start canvassing. So more neighbors will be on the street talking to the residents about the importance of the South Shore Fire Station rebuild. And thank you for your time. Any questions?
Carrie, Chris, thank you very much for the update. Thank you for all your good work. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to provide public comment right now? Okay. And our friends at TriMet. TriMet is here to give us a regional update. I'd like to invite John Serra and Grant O'Connell to join us. We're really glad to have you both here. John.
Hi, Mayor Buck. How are you?
Good to see you.
Good to see you, too. Good evening, Mayor Buck and members of the Lake Oswego City Council. My name is John Serra, and I am the Local Government Affairs Manager for TriMet. Joining me tonight is Grant O'Connell, our Manager of Service Planning and Development. Unfortunately, our Chief Public Affairs Officer, J.C. Vanetta, is sick tonight and was unable to join us. Thank you for the opportunity to join you all tonight to discuss TriMet's budgets and the actions that we have now formally proposed to address our deficit. One of the most challenging parts of this conversation is the conversation on cutting service. We first announced these proposed cuts on January 5th, and we have spent the last few months engaging with your community members in Lake Oswego and our many regional partners to gather feedback and identify the best path forward. You are an essential partner to us, and we understand that changes to our network will affect riders in Lake Oswego and throughout the metro area. And so we appreciate the city's continued engagement throughout this process, and we look forward to our partnership as we work to secure the future of transit for this region. Tonight, Grant O'Connell is going to walk us through the specifics of our proposed changes to the local network, but first I want to provide some context on TriMet's budget and how we arrived at this point. So most government agencies are facing budget crises right now, and I know that you all are seeing and experiencing this. You know how painful it is to make decisions to reduce services that your community members rely on. And today's presentation gives a bit of context on how TriMet has reached the point of needing to cut service due to our budget challenges, the actions that we've taken already, and then I'm going to hand over to the mic to Grant O'Connell to talk about the service changes in specifics. Next slide, please. Just to set the stage of what we are facing, nearly 9,000 mass layoffs were reported in Oregon in 2025, an unprecedented level surpassing the cuts during the Great Recession, and Oregon's unemployment rate rose a full percentage point to 5.2%, its highest point since the pandemic and the third highest in the nation behind California and Nevada. The office vacancy rate for the market raised to more than 27% during the last quarter of 2025, up from the previous quarter of 2026. In downtown Portland, the direct vacancy rate reached more than 34%, also up from the previous quarter. More Oregonians are working remotely, and this continues to be impacting the amount of foot traffic in the Portland city center as compared to before the pandemic. Because of the public safety challenges our communities face, we have also dedicated more money and more people to address the safety concerns that extend onto our system. While calls for police services, including crimes, have been dropping over the recent years, we must continue to focus on providing public safety for our riders and our employees. Next slide, please. The current status of TriMet and what we're facing, our ridership is currently holding steady at about 1.2 million riders per week, and that's about 65.8 million boardings per year. You should know that about 35% of our riders are transit dependent. We know that they need TriMet to get where they're going, and we are a lifeline for many people in the community here. And we see this as both the enrollment and use of our fare program designed for people with low incomes has hit record levels in the last year. We also have started to see declining tax revenue, which you will hear more about in the coming weeks. And fare revenue, we continue to see a drop in our fare revenue. The post-pandemic drop in ridership has led to a drop in our revenue from fares by about $60 million a year. Inflation has increased our costs by 56% over the last 6 years from 2019 to 2025. And while we've worked to create a safe and welcoming environment for our riders to welcome them back, that effort has also required a record amount of resources to increase security and cleaning on our system. We've made investments to reconfigure our network to serve the new needs of your community in a post-pandemic world, and we are dealing with a capital maintenance backlog of about $700 million, which is growing rapidly. Case in point, 2 of our bus garages are more than 40 years old and will need to be upgraded or replaced in the coming years. For us to be a sustainable and reliable transit system, we must fix this problem now. We've set a goal to balance our budget by July 1st of 2028, to fix a minimum of a $300 million budget deficit. We've committed to cutting $93 million in administration, and we need to raise a minimum, I stress a minimum of $48 million a year in new sustainable funding for transit. And we will need to cut service by at least $159 million. That's about 10% of our service by July 1st, 2028. And I would note that without new revenue, we will need to cut more. Internally, we've already begun making changes. We've cut roughly $150 million through efficiencies and an average of 5% reductions in administrative expenses for divisions across the agency. And we've made reductions in staffing, including internal reorganizations of some work groups with the elimination of 68 positions and the layoff of 26 employees. We've cut planned service increases from our budget, and I will note that there are more significant internal cuts and layoffs ahead. Externally, we've increased our fares for the first time in more than a decade, and we've appealed to our state legislators to increase dedicated transit revenue via the STIF program, although there's a great uncertainty about the future of that effort. We've also begun cutting service, and I want to tell you that cutting service is the last thing we want to do. But it is necessary as we work to bring our expenses in line with our revenues. On this slide, you'll see the two small service cuts that went into effect in November of last year and March of this year, the proposal that we are discussing tonight, which is planned to go into effect this August, and another necessary round of cuts coming in 2027. Before I hand over this presentation to Grant to discuss the proposal, I do want to quickly go over our outreach process. For the first round of major service cuts we'll be making this August, we started our outreach efforts. Thanks, Grant.
Happened with the slide deck, apologize. There we are.
Thanks, Grant. For the first round of major service cuts that we'll be making this August, we started our outreach in the fall, and we asked people to rank the types of cuts that we're considering. Our service planning team used that feedback to develop the proposal for specific line-by-line cuts that we shared with the public in January. And in our outreach last fall, we invited comments through the many online channels that we have and with information posted at major stops and stations across the system. We hosted 13 multilingual events and partnered with community-based organizations to recruit participants and provide language interpretation along our bilingual staff. The survey asked people to rank the cuts we could make from cut last to cut first. We heard from over 4,800 respondents and heard strong support for beginning these cuts with strategic, network, efficiency-oriented cuts. The types of cuts people said we should cut last were late night, weekend, and high-frequency services. These priorities helped us shape the proposal that Grant's going to share with you now.
Thanks for that preamble, John, to get that stage set. So in my work in service planning, before embarking on any type of change, we always just reflect back on our guidelines, those being equity, to consider those of most vulnerable, demand, where is the ridership the strongest, productivity, where is ridership not only strong, but relative to the investment, connections, key destinations such as schools, colleges, and housing, and then growth, where do we see growth happening in the future? This is a metric that may be a little hard to follow, but rather a rubric that we use to evaluate all of the different changes that we could possibly imagine doing. So most importantly, any change would have to save. So things that were estimated to save the highest amount were key to look at for us. But also in the fourth column there, from that survey that John referenced last fall, we got from the community sort of a priority, things that the community thought they'd want us to see do first and those that they'd like us to try to avoid. But there's also other things to consider, such as what is the ridership? What is the degree of impact? Is the bus coming 2.5 minutes later, or is it not coming at all? And what is the job access impact? One of our best roles in the community is getting people to work, and so we can do an analysis to effectively see what each line's function is in our community to be able to connect people to jobs and which lines have the biggest impact on that. What we see here is network changes is the one that and the green line is essentially that. The green line and the network changes were the two top things that both saved a lot, had lesser impacts, and the community said, do this first. When I talk about network changes, the idea is try to think about, was the community was saying, try to think about where you can serve the same people but with fewer numbers of lines. And the green line is exactly the best example of that. It starts at Clackamas Town Center, goes up along I-205, and then runs along the Banfield into downtown Portland and down to PSU. And from where it turns to go west, it runs on top of the Max Blue and the red lines. So we have 3 different lines all going from Gateway on into downtown. And so if we end the green line there and ask folks to consider a transfer, we're still preserving that journey. That journey is still possible, but we're expending far fewer resources to do so. And those were the types of, the best example of what the community said, lean into that, focus on an efficiency approach, because the same journeys will still be possible, and you actually yield a significant amount of savings. And so there's some examples of that in Lake Oswego. But where the community said to steer clear of was FS. And for us internally at TriMet, that means frequent service. So where buses run higher frequency every 15 minutes or better, those most notably, especially, and I think it's reflected in the job access impact, over 75% of where our frequent service buses run happen to also be where the highest concentration of trips are in the region. And so the community said, don't touch those, and they happen to impact a lot of rides. So that just kind of gives you a little window into the framework of thinking of how we developed our proposal. This is, again, a menu of all the things that we looked at. And now here's a distillation. The things that we didn't called out, didn't do, and this is reflective of how that proposal overall, network-wide, scored to yield high savings, but also follow what the survey said to do these things first. So, specifically zooming into Lake Oswego, in the current network, you have line 37 starting at the Tualatin Park and Ride, operating on Boone's Ferry up to Country Club, and then on into downtown Lake Oswego here, where we are today. We are proposing to combine that with line 96, and this is a full circle moment for me. I worked with your staff 11 years ago to design that streetscape project through Lake Grove on Boone's Ferry with excellent sidewalks and bus pullouts. And while this package overall is a reduction in service, but by taking that efficiency approach, we have line 96 today operating on the freeway, and when it's on the freeway, it can't make any stops, right? It can't serve anybody other than where it picked up at the Park and Ride. By taking it off the freeway, we're actually doing essentially what the community says. Try to do the same thing, but with lesser resources. So take that bus off the freeway, put it on Boone's Ferry, and suddenly that community where you're building an affordable housing project, and you made that great investment in bus stops those many years ago, is now going to see a one-seat ride on through Mountain Park and into downtown Portland with express trips. And we've effectively replaced line 37 with something arguably better. The 38 line that today is the blue line that comes out of Portland and circles through Mountain Park and then Cruiseway and down 72nd to Tualatin Park and Ride. We're essentially lopping off the Multnomah County portion of that line and sending it to Barber Transit Center, but merging it with line 97. So you now, from Barber Transit Center through Mountain Park, Cruiseway, 72nd, and Tualatin Sherwood Road, Mountain Park now has a one-seat connection to the growing employment centers along Tualatin Sherwood Road, such as Lamb Research and many of the other high-tech and warehousing and distribution jobs along that course, and we've saved the Multnomah County portion of that line. Line 78, no change there. Line 35, no change there. But then there's line 153, operating on McVeigh and Stafford. That route is only about a year to a year and a half old. It's newish. It was frankly a bit of an experiment. With hearing some advocacy from West Lynn. We launched that line running south out of the transit center here in Lake Oswego from McVeigh to Stafford, then along Rosemont and Salamo down into West Lynn. But as you see here, we have standards for what we sort of expect upon for the community to realize out of an investment in service. Historically, we expected 15 boarding rides per hour, and that would mean a cost per ride about 10.53. Now, ridership is changing, as we note, and so we've lowered our standards, recognizing that, those standards may not be achievable where we've got tremendous work from home rates. Brought that down to 8 in '24, and now in 2025, it's down to 6. But line 153 is only averaging 2 rides per hour that vehicle is out on the road, which means the operating cost per rider that we're subsidizing there is around $76 per ride. Put into context, the line 35 that runs on State Street out there, sees 14 boarding rides per vehicle hour while it's out. So that line is proposed along with line 82 out in Gresham, the 2 lines that are not being recombined in any other way, but just outright proposed for elimination. We are required to do a Title VI impact, looking at the disproportionate burden on low income or any disparate impact to minorities, and this proposal in total does not show to have any of those impacts. What it does, though, also impact is the Lyft. This is door-to-door paratransit service available for those who have disabilities preventing them from accessing the fixed route system. Within 3/4 of a mile of any fixed route, so any bus line or max line in our system, we are required by ADA to provide door-to-door Lyft service for those who demonstrate an inability to use fixed route. But with the elimination of lines 153 and 82, we would be retracting that boundary from which areas where Lyft service would be available. Though we note, in particular for here in Lake Oswego, line 153, and this is combined with West Lynn, so those numbers, I don't have a Lake Oswego specific breakdown, but combined with Lake Oswego and West Lynn, that affects 11 addresses. So that is one way to slice the impact of this proposal. We have already gone out to the public and done outreach on this. We did postings at all the affected stops, mailing 253 physical addresses system-wide for where we identified an impact. We had on-street customer service team engaging riders and major news release pushes. We also had 16 events throughout the region with 783 participants, and that yielded 8,100 responses. The top themes were concern about disruption to work commutes, increased wait time, but also, frankly, general appreciation. That's a point of pride for me. I think about, if you think back into the big picture of what all we're doing, that max green line for context of a 5% cut, it represents 2.5%. And by doing that efficiency approach, like the Line 96, pulling it off the freeway, those types of changes where we try to still serve the same population but with fewer resources actually means that list boundary is contracting quite a bit less commensurate with the level of service impact. And I think the community recognized that while as painful as this is, this process, by leaning into those survey results, folks are actually generally pleased with the results, broadly speaking, understanding there's still targeted and localized impacts. So that is our proposal. Happy to take questions.
Thank you, gentlemen. I'm sure we'll have questions. I just have 2 quick questions. So the new 96, how does it compare in frequency to the current 37?
Roughly the same. So the 37 only operates in the peak hour today, and the 96 proposed will actually do so, but with more trips. The 37 is about 3 trips in the peak hour. The 96 will have 5. So that will be an increase in frequency for Boones Ferry, Lake Grove area.
That's 5 trips per
peak period. So generally, there's AM peak and PM peak when people are most likely either going to or coming home from work. So I'm talking about 5 trips in the AM, and then again 5 trips bidirectionally in the PM peaks. So 10 trips total.
And what's the total cost savings of the cuts to the Lyft in just that area of Illo and West Lynn identified on the map?
I do not have that information. We can get back to you. That was not a stated our process was to focus on reducing cost on the fixed route side, and whatever costs yielded on the lift boundary side was not part of the goal, so not freshly tracked in my mind. I'm more aware of the fixed route side, but we can get back to you on that.
Was there any, it just seems like a relatively, I mean, it's folks who I imagine are dependent on the service. It's not even that many people, yet it will be dramatic to them.
And we do know, Mayor Buck, we do know exactly who those folks are, and we are working with all of them directly to try and figure out solutions. There are other opportunities for them with some other ride services that are in the area, so we're working with those folks each individually to try and resolve their issues.
Okay. Because I know even we do some picking up from the ACC, and I don't know if that's even a partnership between TriMet and the city would be more efficient. No. Oh, let's say. Okay, Councilor Boo.
Yes, I thank you very much, and I think it's kind of difficult to see that we have to cut all of this. And the first question, I have one question that's very important to me is, Lake Oswego, we pay, I'm an employer and I pay for the TriMet tax. What I wanted to know, how much payroll is collected from Lake Oswego annually from our businesses, and how much does the service cost to serve Lake Oswego? Because when I pay $100, I expect a service at least $90 or $95. But if we collect all, I want to know the number and how much it costs, like what the ridership in Lake Oswego annually and how much you collect from Lake Oswego. Because it's, that's my first question.
Okay, thank you, Councilor. I'm happy to look into that for you all. Specifically, the number that Lake Oswego pays into the payroll tax, I don't know that number offhand. I'm sure that we would be able to figure it out. In terms of what the value is that Lake Oswego gets out of the system, I do want to be very clear that part of the value is not just every moment that a bus spends within the boundary of Lake Oswego. It is also the access to the entire network that the TriMet service provides to Lake Oswego. I understand that everyone here's highest priority is probably how much service we provide directly to you, but I do want to be very clear that it's hard to quantify that number in the way that you are looking for it, because part of the value is the network.
No, the reason I'm asking the question is Lake Oswego is very poorly served by TriMet, and it's not fair. Like I understand that, yeah, they're minoritized areas that we have to serve. I think it's the role of the state to do that, but Lake Oswego should not serve as a places when its own people cannot be served correctly. That's my question. Like, you know, it's a matter of fairness, because we always talk about fairness. We can participate in the big jar where we put the money for the entire, you know, for everybody, but we have also to be served. And very often, places like Lake Oswego, very often, because you live here, when you repair things, it's higher. Because you live here, when you ask for a grant, even for the school, oh no, you won't get it. But yet we are participating in these things. So we want our city to be a green city, which means we want more ridership so that we leave our cars at home. We have an aging population that want to move. It's very difficult to go from here to the other side of town. We are even thinking of shuttling ourselves. While we are putting money, maybe if we get part of that money, it would be easy for us to have our own shuttles that will go that serve our population. And that's, I think, the idea of fairness. And my second question is, like, how do you get, like, why did you have, because this is a big loss. And if you were not a public agency, you would go bankrupt. Anyone, if it was my business that were on your position, we would be shut down. So my question is, how did TriMet get to this mess, this financial mess?
Well,
Thank you.
I respect that question, and I would actually humbly point out that frankly, many employers are laying off and going bankrupt right now. Inflation, a cost of delivering service has gone up 56% due to inflation, and that is affecting the community, and I see that every day. So that's number one. Number two really is that ridership. We charge a fare. It has been a fact since before we were a government agency, we charge fare. And so before the pandemic, if someone rode TriMet 5 days a week, that's 2 round trips a day, that's 100%, that's 10 trips in a week, that's 100% ridership. Well now, even if somebody works from home just 1 day a week, that's a 20% drop in paying a fare. So ridership is down, right now hovering around 70% of pre-pandemic levels. And so because we charge a fare, that is affecting our bottom line. Then third is the safety and security aspect. You know, my hope is someday we might be able to pull back on that, but we don't feel like we're there yet. We have had to expend quite a considerable amount of resources to be able to make sure that folks feel safe and comfortable to ride. So those are the answers to your questions from my perspective. I don't know if you'd care to add to that.
We certainly understand your concern, Counselor. I just would think to add to Grant's comments that one of the ways that we think about our funding is how we are good stewards of the public funding, because as you said, these are your tax dollars that we're using. When we are talking about providing a ride that comes at the subsidy of a level like $75 per ride, that is far outside the subsidy that are provided for riders on other lines with more ridership. And it is hard for us to justify continuing to pay for that subsidy to serve so few riders when there is so much need out there. And I understand that this may not be the answer that you want to hear, but this is the constant push and pull of the opportunity cost that we are working with. And I'm happy to work with you more about some of the information on specific dollar amounts that you're looking for and how we can continue to partnership with Lake Oswego to improve ridership with the service that we have and get to a better place in the future.
And would we get the number, like, of the payroll taxes we're paying for?
Yes, I can look into that for you, absolutely.
Yeah, and yeah.
I think to build on Councilman Boop's questions, I mean, it does seem like there's perhaps a growing mismatch between who's paying for the system and how the system is used. You know, and so how does TriMet, I mean, if we're seeing decline from the report, decline in payroll tax revenue, and we have more decentralized employment, more, you know, remote work and other, you know, rideshare options, what's the long-term plan?
You know, we're looking at all of the different options for future funding opportunities with TriMet right now. We will be going back to the state legislature in 2027, hopefully with a coalition of partners looking at the STIF increase. The governor has convened a task force looking into what other possible opportunities there are to fund and change the way that we fund transit in the region. We are looking at that as an opportunity to bring across broad stakeholders from business and government, and communities and folks like yourself to try and figure out the way forward that does feel like a fair and equitable way to do this. I don't have specifics on exactly what other opportunities we will be looking for funding right now. I'm happy to engage with you on those when we have them, but we're considering all options at this point.
I just wonder if it's, I mean, because, you know, we all engaged in the discussion down the state, and it's just more of the same system. And I think a lot of the pushback you're receiving is because we rely on this payroll tax kind of work-based, commute-based system, but that's not really what the system is anymore. That's not really who the system is serving. And I think TriMet's going to continue to receive that same political pushback. And you're facing, really, it's a challenge. You have both, systemic financial challenges and then political challenges because of how the system is funded.
That's right.
But it would be great if TriMet would lend a voice, because I think a lot of people would be willing to support a broader base, because it's really a public good. It's not a business-based system, but it's paid with a business-based tax. I think that leads to a lot of the pushback. And so going and just telling more employees they have to pay for a system that they can't use, it's just too narrow, given the broader base, and given the data. And I know I would be, standing right beside you, working for something broader based and getting away from the system, which I think just creates real, both, like I said, political and systemic challenges, for us, because we need the TriMet system. I mean, our climate plan as a state relies on a good transit system, and many people rely on it. But to put that all on the shoulders of employers, when that's really not the system we have anymore, it's just going to lead to constant conflicts, that I'm sure you're encountering in every jurisdiction that you're
That's right.
visiting.
We see that. So another point that I'd like to add for you all is we do have our regional coordination program, and that is funding that TriMet passes through to the counties and our local service providers like Ride Connection and some of the local Clackamas County shuttle services. Those are actually funded in large part by TriMet with our regional coordination program. Mayor Buck, we've talked about this extensively in the past. We see, to your point, we see these locations where it seems that fixed route service is not always providing the service that you as local electeds are looking for your community. We hear you that you are looking for shuttle services, which is not the core of what TriMet provides. But we do provide for those services with our regional coordination funding and the funding that we provide. If there were an increase in the STIF in the past, when we had looked to do that during the last legislative session, we had hoped to increase the funding for the regional coordination program and also the funding that's going directly to the regional, to the local service providers. Those things independently would go a long ways towards providing some of the services that you all are looking for, and some of that would be done with TriMet's funding. So we want to continue to think about these partnerships. We know it's a dynamic situation, and we want to make sure that we're able to move forward together, because that's really the only way that we'll be able to figure this out.
Thank you, John. Councilor Afghan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have 3 questions. The first question is yes or no answer. When you eliminate, well, first of all, I believe the state has this law that if you are within half a mile of transit lines, you don't have to have parking or garages. So if my memory serves me correctly, when you eliminate lines, do you look at how it impacts the residences in that area that don't have parkings or they need to have parking?
Yes, but can I add to that?
Sure.
I would say that I think you're talking about the climate-friendly, equitable communities, CFEC requirements. Those are for frequent service lines. Those are for housing developed along frequent service lines. We are not proposing to cut any service along a frequent service line.
Okay, thank you.
Grant, do you have something to
Well,
add?
it's actually also the inverse of what you're saying. It's saying that if you are along a frequent service line, you can relax your parking requirements. So it functionally, it works what you described, but it's the inverse of what you're saying.
That was the right answer, by the way. Thank you. Next question is, I'm hearing a lot of effort into efficiency. And when I stand back and look at your criteria like equity, demand, sometimes those two go against each other. And Lake Oswego has a lot of service people who come and work and go back to their homes. And I'm not sure how these eliminations of lines affect those people who are the most population who need these services. So what are TriMet's commitment to make sure that the cities like Lake Oswego, who have a lot of service people, are served the right amount of service. Did my question make sense?
Yes, it did. I'm just trying to think of exactly how I want to answer. I would say that you are right in identifying one of the tensions in our service planning, and Grant can expand upon that. But I would say that the intention of this proposal that we have made was to do the least effect to the fewest people. So even as we make these cuts, and based on the feedback that we've gotten from the community, I think that we have attempted to at least harm the fewest people, because we know that this is going to harm someone no matter where we do this. And we do need to do this because of our budget situation. So I don't know exactly how to respond to your question of what kind of commitment can we make to communities that have a large service worker population, other than the fact that no matter where we are looking to make changes, we are trying to do the least harm to the fewest people.
And the least harm to fewer people, that's awesome. But when we talk about equity, when we have people who cannot afford having their own apartment and they're living at somebody's ADU along the line that is being eliminated.
Yes.
So when I look at those kind of things, the efficiency part of the conversation doesn't make sense for me, because we're supposed to take care of the people, yet we're looking at it as a business. But Mayor Buck just said we're in the business of providing service for people, especially those who need us. I'm not sure if we can answer that question right now, but that's something I want you to walk away with, that our city has a lot of people, service people who come and then go home. How do we take care of them from the equity part of it, not from the demand part of it? Thank you. Next question is, I'm also hearing a lot of continuous improvement. Well, if we go from Clackamas Town Center, go up north this way, right now, we know where the land use boundaries are. We know where the jobs are. We know where populations are. Have you stand back and look at the big picture and say, if we were to do this over right now, not efficiency, continuous, it's like, forget about what's existing, how would we do this? Have you done that?
We did through Forward Together. That was the main point of our Forward Together project, was to say the old paradigm of commuting to downtown Portland for commute hours 5 days a week is no longer. And we did redraw our map of what we envisioned that would be, but we drew it to a different budget target than we now have, because we were at that point aspirational that if we did so, we would recapture the ridership that we had lost. Well, what's changed is not that map is incorrect. We are still, if you really are a nerd and look at what we're doing with our routes, you still see us following Forward Together, but we're doing it with lesser frequency, because that it was built around a premise that if we reorient to the new normal, we could recapture ridership and therefore fare revenue, which is part of our funding stream. And that just, we had to reach a tipping point and acknowledge that we weren't going to get there, that we could not recapture enough ridership to make up for the old paradigm of the commuter 5 day a week. And so we're still working towards a vision where there are more crosstown trips, there are more services and more places that aren't oriented towards downtown Portland. We're still working, like you just saw, I'm working to recognize that line 38 that today goes to downtown Portland, we're essentially reconfiguring it to go to the warehousing and distribution centers, where there is still in-person work, where you have to still show up 5 days a week along Tualatin and Sherwood Road, over that old model of the worker bee in downtown Portland. So I think we're still doing it. We're just working to a different budget target than we were a few years ago, would be my longer answer to your question.
I don't know if I heard redesigning everything based on today's information. Again, I heard a lot of efficiency, productivity, how can we make this better, as opposed to redesign everything with a clean slate. And that's okay. That's okay. Again, I don't know if we can answer that question right now, but I
We
wish-
have over 80 lines, and Forward Together touched 90% of them. It was drawn
Okay.
with a clean slate approach, envisioning or orienting our service towards a new paradigm that where folks are not always going downtown. So it was a clean slate approach.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Counselor Afghan. Counselor Winland.
Well, I don't envy the two of you to go around to all the city councils and talk about service cuts. You guys, I grew up as a younger person in the area, and, you know, you just threw 35 cents in the till and you got on a TriMet bus, and it was safe, it was frequent, it was doing everything. We're the poster child of transit, whatever, and the paradigm has changed. And I think one thing that the Councilor Afghan's question is really at the 30,000-foot level. It seems like we're still using the same parameters of the transit system. And part of it is max is fixed. We can't really just move that around. But the current bus system that we have, we're cutting routes and we're not necessarily adding routes, but I'm concerned about the people that have never really had the service. And to Councilor Afghan's point, all the people, if we redid the entire system, would we be serving more people now that A, could be revenue generators, and also adapt to the new commuting configurations. I don't know if I'm making sense, but you're looking at routes that exist and that you're adding in, and I don't know if we're necessarily servicing the metro area in the best way by keeping all the routes and just changing the parameters on them. I'm looking at, have we thought outside the box and said, geez, we've got 1,200 people that work in Lake Oswego that work at Nike. Why don't we have a service that takes people from Westland and Lake Oswego to Nike or to Intel? And I haven't heard that sort of out-of-box thinking. I look at like San Francisco, where the private world there's Google buses, there's Facebook buses, there's, you know, all kinds of different buses that people get on, and they go in a coach that has internet connection, and they get back and forth. Now, granted, you might tell me that, okay, these are the rich and snobby people who have stock options with Facebook and whatever, but they are still revenue paying, and I think you have to look at your revenue side to boost that up, because I mean, if you just continue to cut and cut and cut and cut, pretty soon there's nothing left to cut. I guess I'm just trying to find out, listen, when I go by a TriMet bus, there's hardly anybody on it when I drive by. Yes, I drive a car and I look, why don't we get shorter buses? Or maybe that doesn't make sense, maybe it does. In my business, we adapt or die. And we've reinvented. I've had a company for 25 years, and if you knew it from the day I started it and today, we've evolved 4 times, completely different. Same people, many of the same people, but we have completely readjusted and adapted. And I guess that I don't hear enough about that in the headlines of saying, hey, what are the true needs of people that maybe even aren't served now with the current lines that could be served. So I guess opportunities, that's my part. And when it says you want to do the least amount of harm to the fewest people, you almost are saying to the current people instead of potential people. And that's where I would say to open up maybe a little bit of the lens to say, what opportunities are we missing in the regional area that we could add revenue to help support some of the other services that we do. It's a hard problem, there's no doubt. And you guys, I know you go to work and try to fix it. And I'm just hoping that the leadership and the political people are willing to say, hey, maybe we need to open up some options and have a real hard conversation to say, if we're going to do this regional transportation right, what are some opportunities that we could maybe get into that are not just cutting our current services, but things that we could be looking at? And maybe you've already done that. But if you have, you guys need to get the message out, because I'm a pretty avid reader of lots of, I read a lot about policy and things, and I don't see enough of those bullet points. I see too many of, we're cutting, and revenue's not hitting targets, and pre-pandemic, TriMet was already challenged to, we saw, I remember a meeting with TriMet in my early years before the pandemic, where we had growth curves that you were trying to hit from before pandemic to meet budgetary challenges. So it's a world of hurt now where you're minus ridership and higher costs. So anyway, I don't envy your position, but I thank you for doing it and being really soldiers in the cause to make better transportation options for people. I just think we need to think outside the box a little bit and look at new revenue streams and new ways of doing things. Easy for me to say, but that's the challenge.
Council President, I really appreciate your comment. We agree with you. I want to assure you that it may not come through on a slide deck presentation, but we are constantly looking at different opportunities. We're trying to take a wide lens to look at how we can think and innovate in this space. Even some of the examples that you mentioned, we've been thinking about shorter buses. Yes, we've thought about shorter buses. There may be an opportunity for that in the future to better serve some of the more rugged terrain in Clackamas County that it's hard to get a 40-foot bus on. Part of the problem there is the biggest cost when gas and diesel isn't so expensive for driving a bus is actually the operator and not just the bus itself. So it doesn't solve as many problems as you think it does, but it could solve some problems, and we are trying to think creatively and tackle some of those problems. I would love to talk with you more about your ideas and what you're thinking and sort of bring you into that conversation a little bit more. It's hard to do. You said that it's not coming through in the news media and the public sphere very much. I would agree with you. It is hard to share that kind of information and get that out to folks right now. Information about challenges and other things happening on the TriMet system are usually getting more views and more often are picked up by news. And we would love to talk with you more and have your help to get some of the good news out when that is happening. There was a lot that you said, and I'm trying to respond to all of it. I would love to talk more with you about it, though, because I think that there's a lot that you said that we agree with and would love to partner on. Grant, I don't know if you have... Yeah,
I just really appreciate the spirit with which you deliver that you're interested in looking to help. And my email and phone number is available and open. I would happily work through any idea that people have. I didn't choose this career to be a transit Grinch. I chose this career to be a transit Santa. And so if I can find a way to get back to the Santa spirit, I am all ears. Minor thing I would just point out, the Google, Facebook buses are paid for and operated by them, not
Right.
because the transit service doesn't do what they want it to do.
Right.
But the spirit is there, and I that should not take away from what I said. I really sincerely appreciate we are open to ideas and would love to partner with anybody to figure out a way to do some stuff that would increase ridership. So.
And Council President, one other point that I wanted to make to you is that I hear from you and from many others a very valid concern that there are large groups of people in demand that we are just currently not servicing. And certainly there is demand that we're not able to meet. That's part of the constant, the challenges of operating a constrained system with constrained resources. But we have done a lot of research into where that demand is. We have done a transit market index study for the region to determine where the riders are and if there are places that are glaring gaps and where service is not, but there are people who want to ride and where they want to go. So I'm happy to talk with you a little bit more about that, but I just wanted to assure you also that that's something that we're thinking about too. We're always happy to take feedback from you all if you are seeing parts of the community that you think we're not taking into account when Grant and his team are doing this very data-heavy planning that they're doing. But I want to be clear that it is something that we're trying to think about and get that answer as well, because we want to serve those people. If they're out there, we want to give them service.
Well, I think we see the, like Councilor Windler was saying, I mean, the region has been changing for decades now, and this is before any of our time, and think back to even in the late 90s when JPAC adopted like a new transit model, and then nothing ever happened with it, because that's when employment was changing. There was growth out in Washington County, Clackamas County, and the employment center of downtown was already then changing. So I know the current story is, it was COVID. Well, it's not COVID. As a region, we have just refused to change. We've sat on our hands for all these years, and now here we are. I know someone asked earlier, like, why are we here, Councilor Booth, like all of a sudden? And it seems like that because now people are waking up to, wow, this is huge impending fiscal cliff at TriMet, but it has been coming for a long time. I think a lot of people echo Councilor Windler's comments. It's like, well, we're not going to cut our way, out of this. Like the system needs real structural changes. This year, Lake Oswego, Westland, Sherwood, and Tualatin, we all set council goals and are working together to address the transit needs of our communities. And we'd love for TriMet to be a part of that. We'd love for you to be getting the ears of more suburban communities into what their different needs are in the system so that we can work together and we can work together on long-term, more sustainable funding solutions for that system as well, because it is so important to residents all throughout the region and to our broader goals as a region too. So I just really, though, want to thank you both for taking the time to be here tonight. It's not an easy job, but we do not want to just see us to continue down this same challenging path. And it will take, and we tend to do this in Oregon, structural problems abound. It's not just in transit, like left and right, city funding, everything. And we just say no to this, no to that. Oh, well, this is, we just take everything off the table and we just keep doing the same thing. So hopefully we can all work together to achieve some different results. So thanks as always, for your collaboration and your partnership and your time here tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Buck. We appreciate you and the city of Lake Oswego. And we share your concerns and want to work together.
Thank you, John.
And sorry JC couldn't be here tonight. We apologize.
We miss him. Yes. Thank you.
But you're wonderful.
You were great. So we'll tell him.
We appreciate that, Council President. Thank you.
Okay. Now we move on to the consent agenda. There are two items on the consent agenda. Resolution 26-17 is an IGA with Clackamas County and approval of meeting minutes from some of our February and March meetings. Is there a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
Move to adopt the consent agenda.
Second that.
Motion made by Councilor Corrigan and seconded by Councilor Afkin. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes 6-0. All right. And now on to council business. We are going to discuss and approve the work plans for the 2026 council goals and initiatives. I invite our Assistant City Manager, Ms. Phelan, talk to us about the work plans. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. My name is Megan Phelan. I'm the Assistant City Manager. And I just wanted to first take a moment to say thank you again for such a productive, inspiring, inspirational, informative council goal-setting session that we had last month. And also want to thank certainly the executive team who was there as well to have conversations with council about the various different goals you guys were considering for 2026. As you may recall, that resulted in 22 initiatives under 8 overarching goals. 14 of the 22 initiatives are being carried over from the previous year. Goals and initiatives were adopted at your last council meeting on March 31st, and work plans have been developed for each initiative that outline the key elements and milestones and are before the City Council this evening for approval. Specifically, the question before City Council is whether the work plans properly articulate the scope of the initiative, identify the right key elements, establish the appropriate level of community engagement, and set realistic expectations, or milestones rather, to complete the work. City Council may also recall that during goal setting, there were approximately 6 work plan items that did not fall into any one of the adopted initiatives. In my staff report, I addressed each one of those items and provide a proposed response plan on how each of them will be addressed and or implemented. The executive team and other city staff are here this evening and are happy to answer any questions City Council may have about the work plans or the work plans items that are addressed in the staff report. And with that, we'll take any questions.
Thank you so much. Yeah, very detailed reports. Colleagues, any questions?
Can we add some
Comments?
more? No, just kidding.
I wanted to identify the one, we had a goal around it's our goal around the assistance to students, some of the students in town in the housing. Let me find it here.
Mayor, I believe you're referring to the Advocate for and Explore partnerships to strengthen resources that subsidize affordable housing properties for the children who live there.
Yes, exactly. And I just want to end, let's see. I mean, we don't have to obviously make a, just so it's, I was thinking on that we would work, it's a different goal, but not anything that's really in, as we talked about it, goals in our, so I'm just trying to, this is so many work plans here.
Number six, page 60, page 60 on 100
Page 60.
the whole.
But anyway, I was thinking we would collaborate on that both with the county as a provider of the supportive housing services dollars, obviously then with the housing providers themselves, the local housing providers, and then with the school district as well on that, at least as 3 initial kind of partners in doing that, looking at how to best approach that.
Yeah, I think absolutely. My understanding was there was a meeting approximately about a year ago with some of those similar stakeholders. And as identified in the plan, we would arrange and hold that meeting. It's been about a year, maybe a little bit, year and a half later to reassess the situation. My understanding is a lot of those partners were at that initial meeting as well.
Yes. Okay.
That makes good sense. We're happy to do that.
Anyone else? Everything look good? Yeah. Okay. Is there a motion to approve the work plans?
I move to approve the work plans. Is there a number?
Second.
No. It's just approve the work plans.
Yeah, I move to approve the work plans.
Thank you, Councilor Corian, and seconded by Councilor Wendland. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that motion passes 6-0. Thank you and the team
Great.
for all the hard work putting these plans together. Yeah, it's just a lot of work. in
Thank
these.
you. And as a
Thank you.
reminder, we'll be back for a quarterly update so we can keep you updated on our progress towards completing these initiatives for this year.
Thank you, Megan.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Great.
Mike.
Thank you so much. Okay, and now we have the 2025 Lake Oswego Police Department Annual Report. Invite Chief Burke and Captain Simon. Join us. Good to have you both here. Gentlemen.
Sorry, I'm trying to fit in the chair, all the stuff on. Taking a second.
I didn't put as much on. You ready with the?
I think we are, yeah, well, in a second, I suppose, yeah.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor, members of council. I'm George Burke. I'm the Chief of Police for Lake Oswego Police Department. Captain Simon is here with me for the presentation tonight. I think over the last several years, we've become accustomed to the presentation that we make to kind of give you the state of the union when it comes to our police department. I can't say how proud I am of the work that the members of our organization do in representing this community, and I think that shows through, especially when we take a look at some of the survey results that have shown how pleased our community is with the service that they provide and what they receive. We say that, and I will tell you that we'll talk about some of the state of the organization when it comes to our organizational chart and positions within the organization. We have done things a little bit different over the years, and for the first time, I think that I've come before you, I can say, I'll knock on wood, that LOCOM, our communications center, is fully staffed. We have made some adjustments in LOCOM a little bit. We've moved some other non-sworn positions to beef up the ability to do the job and provide 24-hour service to the communities that we provide service to. And I am super proud of the work that they've done. We have 2 folks who are ready to get out of their training program and hopefully get into dispatching on their own. So not only will we be full staff, we'll be full strength and full trained, I hope. So that's my knock on wood moment. As I shift to talking a little bit about where we are with our police department and our sworn positions, we are currently, we have 2 vacant positions. That doesn't sound like a whole lot when we take a look at 48 people within the organization, but we have had some other vacancies that have occurred due to different leaves that have caused us to have 3 different positions that have not had people actively working in them. So that puts us at a position where we have had to withdraw a lot of our specialty units away from places that we would have had them working, like as SROs and as we had a partnership with the transit police. All those folks have come back to our organization and are filling patrol districts. The good news is we have a vacant position that we have out trying to hire a lateral officer for a traffic position. So we're down to 1 motor officer right now, which we'll talk a little bit about when we talk about traffic enforcement and how we educate in our community and create traffic safety. I think it's really important to understand that we are doing our best to bring in somebody who is already trained so that we can use those resources fairly quickly rather than put them through an exhaustive training program where we have to get them certified. So those are some of the things we're trying to do in that area. We have also focused our efforts in hiring new positions, trying our best to bring in lateral officers. You all heard some of the strategies that we used when we came before you with the collective bargaining agreement. There are things we're doing to try and entice people who are already certified to come over and work for us. So those are some of the things we're doing. We have 4 people currently in a hiring process that I feel pretty strongly about, that I think we will probably get hired. We know that we have some anticipated vacancies coming through retirement, so we are going to be in this hiring process for quite some time. I don't believe we're at the end of the world, and I think that we have a lot of good programs in place that are going to help us get through that. Part of what we talk about is, we start talking about traffic safety and how we're going to impact traffic safety. And with only 1 motor officer, how do we become visible? And I think a lot of that has to do with having conversations, looking at data to see where our officers are working and how we encourage them to be more visible in the neighborhoods. It's really easy for us to highlight and focus on those areas where we have our biggest, our highest amount of traffic, as well as focusing on our high traffic or our high collision areas, but also being visible and showing enforcement and education within the neighborhoods, I think, goes a long way. Some of the other things that we want to make sure that we're doing is we're taking a look at how can we involve community, how can we receive community input, and how we can impact traffic safety in the neighborhood through engagement with our community partners. So a lot of different things I think that we're looking at doing to make sure that we are focusing on engaging with community and providing the service that our community expects to receive. So it's a lot on where we are kind of with the state of the union. I'm going to give the details over to Captain Simon because he's going to get into all of the measurables that I know that you guys like to hear about as far as where we are, what we've done over the last year.
All right, thank you, Chief. Good evening, everyone. It's good to see you all again. Thanks for having us. I'm going to jump right into a lot of the data points. Please slow me down if you have any questions, but I know that we've done this a few different times. So last year, we saw a 1.3% increase in 911 calls to dispatch, so it's great that they're, full staffed and almost full trained because, they're staying really busy over there. We saw a 7% increase in total incidents from the year prior. That increase mostly came actually from self-initiated activity, which we saw about a 37% increase over the year prior. And that's typically in traffic stops and in extra patrols. Calls for service breakdown, so we saw a nearly 8% decrease in miscellaneous offenses. I saw an 11% decrease in Part 1 crimes, which you see up there. A 15% increase in Part 2 crimes. That's typically for us, so it's thefts, frauds, those types of offenses that we see. And then we had an 8% increase in arrests from the previous year. On the noteworthy calls for service, now some of these, if I give a percentage, it seems really high because the numbers are really small. So I know you guys all see that. So I've tried to narrow that down so it doesn't sound so sensational in some ways. But assaults were essentially the same from 24 to 25. We saw an 18% decrease in burglaries, which is great. There was a 23% decrease in stolen vehicles, and I think you all know from the few years that we've done this presentation, going back to 2020, stolen vehicles was a big thing. So we're seeing a decrease there. However, we are finding a lot of stolen vehicles. So we had about a 223% increase. I wanted that for the sensationalism, so that's why it's in there. Our officers are very active. Working a little bit, they're really good at identifying some of the areas where we're seeing that suspicious activity and where we're finding these types of offenses. There was a small increase in weapon-related offenses and a 7% decrease in thefts.
One of the things I'd love to highlight in the stolen vehicle recovery is, as you see, our stolen vehicles are dropping, we're recovering everybody else's. So we're helping
Doing
our
everyone
neighboring
else's work.
communities.
We're all about service, so that's what we're here to do. For those that you might not know, so last year was really our first full year of our drone program, so our unmanned aerial systems, and so we had those out there. We have 9 drone pilots and 4 different drones that are operational out in the field, and then we have another training drone, so if we smack into something, it's a little easier to replace that because these things can get kind of expensive. Of the 41 operational deployments, 14 of those we resulted in locating subjects or suspects, not just here in Lake Oswego, but also helping out agencies around us. Actually, the FLIR image that you see up there, that's locating a homicide suspect in a Canby incident. So absolutely instrumental device that we've been using. It helps keep people safe, helps us track things in a safe way. So it's wonderful to have, and they do a lot of training with it. And I always cringe when they show up and go, hey, can we get another drone? Because it's kind of expensive. Now let's talk about traffic violations, and this is where I get excited as the former motor. So what we hope to do is focus on offenses that we know contribute to crashes. That's the biggest thing that we're looking for. As the chief talked about, we've had one motor at times in the past year. Part of that reason is one of our motors got promoted. He's a sergeant now. So I think he's going to take his love for traffic, and he'll probably spread that into the patrol side. But it's really efficient on a bike, sometimes a little bit harder to do when you're just in the patrol vehicle. But overall, in comparing the years, we saw a 3.7% increase in violations that were cited. And for us on the traffic enforcement side, we really try and focus, aside from on the violations that we know contribute to crashes, but we kind of take that 3 E's philosophy, which is the education, enforcement, and engineering. On the education front, we do a variety of presentations, like this one included. We also meet with a lot of neighborhood associations, and we talk about traffic. Sergeant Hall, who I think you guys all know, he goes to a lot of these, and he shares a lot of what's happening on the traffic front. We take feedback from contact us submissions that ask for certain extra patrols in different areas. We share this info out to our folks. We engage in child safety seat clinics, which is, again, another way to help address issues, especially related to safety, because we want those kiddos to be safe. We have speed trailers. We're looking at purchasing another one, so that way we can get that out there and provide that information to folks. On the enforcement side, we're very proactive and reactive. So, when we have our motors and we have our patrol staff that aren't attached to calls for service, they're going to get out there and they're going to do it as they can to make sure people are being safe. We also engage in a lot of high visibility enforcement details, which I know we try and put out words in the city saying, hey, this is when our folks do a really good job of networking with other agencies, and it's like a traveling road show of motors that go everywhere to really focus on bad driving behavior. We're also participate in a variety of traffic enforcement grants, from speed, distracted driving, impaired driving, and a number of others as well, pedestrian safety enforcement. On the engineering side, I'm really thankful for our partners in the traffic engineering department. We actually work with them to send all of our crash data to them. So that way it helps us all look at areas within the city that we might identify as a hotspot. And whether that's just because of the amount of vehicles in there, or maybe there's an engineering issue that we need to look at. Years ago, I remember us doing this on Cruise Way when we had kind of the flashing red or flashing yellow turn at Westlake. We had a lot of crashes, and they were just offset enough that we were able to switch that in working with them. And then our supervisors, we look at our officer statistics, we look at all these different extra patrol areas that we ask our folks to be a part of, typically in the residential areas, as the chief alluded to, and they help drive those activities with our officers. So, and again, we're always looking for outside-the-box strategies as well, but we see we're on the uptick. We just need to get another motor in, and I think that it'll continue to be higher. Now, the Oregon stop report, so traffic stops typically lead right to the information in this, and we've talked about it before, so I don't want to get too much into it, but you know that the CJC uses 3 different stop models, or 3 different analysis models to analyze the stops that we have. So the decision to stop, search hit rate, and the predicted disposition. And out of nearly, a little over 6,600 different stops that they evaluated, there were no statistical disparities in any of the data that we submitted, which shows that our folks are going out there and they're stopping for the right reasons and doing the things the right way. Getting into use of force. So we have a pretty low reporting threshold. So any force, whether displayed or used, we're going to go ahead and report on. And as usual, the vast majority of the force that we document is from calls for service as opposed to self-initiated activity. It's really rare, I think we've talked about this before, when you consider the number of police incidents that we respond to or are involved in, and then when we actually use force. It's less than 1/4% of everything that we do results in some sort of use or display of force. And in actually last year, we had a 12.5% decrease in the number of incidents involving the display or use of force. There was a decrease in the number of force events involving an outside agency where we went to help out. A lot of that is because of, it's typically canine usage that we send out, and then they go out and help out. And fortunately, we've had a couple dogs retire, so we haven't had as many canines out there. We have one now. So Officer Ball and Shadow are released and ready to do their thing. Injuries are also very rare when you look at this, mostly consisting of superficial scrapes, bruises, or strains for both the officers and the subjects we encounter. The most significant injury that we had last year involved a subject that was called in as a slumper. The driver was in a stolen vehicle, tried to ram several of our police cars, tried to flee, and ended up getting bit by the dog. So that was the most significant injury we had last year.
And I think for us to actually track those different types of events where it's not just force used, but where it's displayed, I think really helps us focus as a learning organization as to how do we create some of the best outcomes that we could possibly have. And I think the low numbers of incidents, when you take the number of calls for service, even if you broke it down to number of arrests that we make, the force used during those events is extremely low.
Yeah, thank you for that. There was a 6.5% decrease in total uses of force or displays of force from the previous year. There was a 5% increase in multiple officers using force, which just means that we're getting more of our folks to a scene, which is great because we want more resources there in order to kind of get things safe as quickly as we can. There was a 13% increase where officers used or displayed multiple force types. And to the chief's point, I mean, this is a great example of de-escalation, right? Where we'll show up and we'll display or be using one type of force, and as the situation dictates, we move to a different, more effective force option. Oftentimes, maybe starting out with, say, like a taser that's out, then we go to a hands-on, and then we're able to take a person into custody. I said canine, again, both canine use did retire in 25, and so that's why those numbers are as low as you see there. This speaks exactly to what the chief was actually just mentioning. So the graph on the left, or the chart that you see on the left, this is everything. This is every display of force, every use of force. The chart on the right is the actual force that was used, or where we actually pointed a device at someone, not that they just perceived it. As you can see in both, physical control is the highest, which is kind of what you would expect, right? When we get folks that are resisting arrest and doing that type of stuff, we're going to go hands-on most often. There was a decrease of 30% in total force used versus displayed when you go from the chart on the left and you go to the right. And again, like I said, physical control was the most common force used by police. It's not an exact science, but we do try and identify certain common incident factors. Just it helps us in our analysis to help point to what we should do in training and what it is that we're seeing and what resources we need to bring to bear in some of these situations. More than one factor can be present, so when you see that up there, it isn't just like this one force incident had this one factor. Oftentimes there could be many things. Behavioral health factors tended to be the most common amongst all of our force incidents. I think followed right by, followed closely behind by eluding and resisting.
If I could jump in really quick, I think when you take a look at the behavioral health aspect of those incidents that result in some level of force being utilized, I think really helps us to support the position that we've added through the grant that has allowed us to bring on a case manager to help us with our behavioral health case, all the work that gets done out of that unit.
Yeah. Okay. Talking about complaints, in the simplest terms, formal complaints are violations of policy or rules if the violation was true. Informal service complaints are typically don't violate a policy, law, or rule. They could, but it might be such a minimal thing. It could be saying like, hey, be a little bit more courteous out on the traffic stop, type of deal. And they're definitely treated as opportunities for improvement. Last year, so again, very rare compared to the number of incidents that we're involved in. I think it's 0.02% of everything we did resulted in some sort of informal complaint. There were no use of force complaints last year. We did receive one bias-based policing service complaint. The facts sort of announced themselves, so it didn't require an IA, but we still looked into it, investigated it, and we forwarded those results to the state as we're required to by law. Of the IAs in 25, which you can see there's only 8 of them there, there were 23 sustained policy violations that we addressed through various means. And then on the service complaint side, which was a 42% decrease from the year prior, there were no sustained policy violations. So pretty good. And I think it's testament to the great work that our folks are doing. And as the chief talks about, being a learning organization and looking for ways to improve. And then our supervisors doing a really good job of coaching and mentoring folks and helping work through some of those more manneristic type of issues. Now, getting back into the behavioral health specialist, which the chief had talked about, important to know when you see some changes up here that the adult resource officer, in light of some of the staffing that we had on patrol, was reassigned to patrol, which is why you don't see them up there in this case. The addition of the behavioral health case manager also helped with not only just the services that we provided, but also with the data capture. And what we learned is Amber, the specialist, was probably way busier before, and now we're actually getting accurate counts of what it is that they do. So they stay really busy. So having Evan there has been great because she's able to really capture what it is that we're doing. In Lake Oswego, we had an 88% increase in responses with the department staff, an 82% increase in responses without LOPD staff. These are folks that they felt safe, that they've got usually typically ongoing contact with. And then a 208% increase in phone outreach. I do think that Amber did a lot of phone outreach before, it's just we're now actually getting kind of accurate numbers. And you'll see we had very similar increases in activity for us helping out Westland. I think if you guys remember, Amber and Evan, they go over there once a week to help out in that capacity there. We're going to talk about overdoses now. Small numbers, but still some of the percentages might be a little bit, they might be kind of high once we talk about it. But the good news is there were 0 reported fatal overdoses in Lake Oswego last year. There was a 92% increase in non-fatal overdoses. Again, small numbers, and we'll talk about this in a sec. and an 80% increase in total overdoses from the year prior. The 20% increase in non-fatal cases with naloxone that was administered, and there was a 133% increase in non-fatal cases where naloxone was not administered. Now, sometimes that could be because calls are sent to us as an overdose. We get there and it's not necessarily an overdose. Or in this case, maybe something was administered before we got there and it's just not captured up and through here. 74% of the overdose calls that we responded to resulted in a transport to a hospital. 40% of those overdoses or overdose calls involved more than one substance, which is pretty common. You'll see that we'll talk about in the next slide kind of what some of that is. The lowest age that we had on a call was 7. The highest we had was 91. Typically, obviously, on the low side, it's usually an accidental exposure.
Hopefully at 91 too.
I hope so. Sometimes. I didn't go back and look at that specific case, so I can't speak intelligently to it, but I hope so. Unknown mixes of substances were most often present. That's what we saw. So a combination of things. Still seeing a lot of prescription drug overdose also mixed with alcohol. Those would be the most common. A lot of times our folks are getting there and they're not able to discern what exactly caused the issue. But I think that we do a pretty good job of getting resources there as quickly as we can and making sure that we get people help when they need it. So I have gone through that really fast, I think really fast. But of course, if you guys have any questions, thank you so much.
Thank you. You didn't say, do you have any? I want to give Councilor Corrigan and Verdict a chance to ask questions. Questions?
And we will post all of this on our website right after this too. So.
Can I ask a quick question?
Well, I'm giving the ladies a chance. They didn't speak last time. Councilor Verdict, please go ahead.
Thank you. I appreciate that. First, thank you for all the work that you guys do. The teamwork is noticeable. The fact that our community feels safe, is in large part because of what you do and how you engage. So thank you very much for all of that. I just want a point of clarification, and that's, do you think if we would have had 2 full-time traffic officers out there, our numbers would have been closer to a couple years ago? Because
I would think so, yes.
Well, I'll take it one step further. I will tell you they would be. And even with the traffic officers that we had at the time, we had reassigned because of some of the staffing issues. We had reassigned them away from doing traffic enforcement. So they still increased the numbers, even though they were not actively working traffic as much as they had been. So now that we can refocus that back to full traffic enforcement, I would expect to see the numbers increase.
Okay, that would be fantastic, because that's the one thing I hear all the time from our citizens is, the speeding, the going through stoplights, and you all know this. You've seen the data, you've talked to the citizens, but I think the more we can keep kind of focusing on that in terms of citations, education, everything that you're doing, if we can just kind of keep that focus. And also, it's great to be out on State Street, but I think also getting out a little more into town, to the different areas within town is also really great, as much as you can pull that off. So thank you.
Yeah, so our supervisors do try and manage that, and actually in our briefing room, so Sergeant Hall, when he gets a lot of those requests, because they typically land in the traffic area, actually puts those up on the reader board, so that way the officers, when they go into briefing, they can kind of see, hey, these are the more residential areas, maybe not quite thoroughfare areas that folks are looking for some extra patrols for. And so he gets those out there, and then our supervisors can help direct that.
Great, and I got one final. What can we do to support you?
Recruit one.
I would say you guys, you support us every time we come in here and we make a presentation to council. There's not a time that we come in that there are not positive comments that come back from all of you. And that, to me, is the highlight of the work that we do when we present to you the information that we do, is to take that feedback and give it back to our officers, because hearing it directly from you to them, I think really matters, and it impacts really the environment in which they work in. And I can tell you from working in several different communities, you don't get that elsewhere.
Mm-hmm. And you bring that up at all the swearing-ins.
I do.
It's a big deal, and we really appreciate that. Mm-hmm. It's a hard job, and all the people here that do it, we want them to, well, including you two, but you two, I mean, you work hard stuff, but.
They do all the heavy lifting.
It's a lot,
Yeah.
and they're out there, and I know recently especially, they've all been working a lot just with the staffing and remain really dedicated to this community, and we definitely appreciate that, and we notice
Very
it.
appreciated.
For sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nothing?
You're awesome.
Counselor Women? Okay.
They go first.
Counselor
They go
Afghan
first.
and then Counselor Booth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a couple, 3 questions and 1 comment. On traffic violation, there was a category in 2023 that didn't exist, but in 2024, it was failed to renew registration. And then last year, it's number 3. So what do you make of that?
Well, a lot of folks are driving around and not renewing their registration, and so we do have folks that get out there, and when they see that, they address it. I know here in the court, I believe that they're all fix-it tickets now as well, so it's just a matter of getting the violation corrected. If you look back at, so if you look at the 4th highest citation that's issued there, it's actually still higher than the year prior, which is that failed to obey traffic control device, so it's still on there, and you can see that they wrote 318 of those citations. The year prior, they actually only wrote 297, so they did write more. It just happens that apparently this year, for whatever reason, or this last year, for whatever reason, we ran into a whole lot more folks that were driving with greatly expired tags.
The amount of information you have here is awesome. So as I'm looking at year to year, I go, is there a trend or pattern that we could address someplace else that would help this situation? That's why I asked that question. Use of force, subject injured. These numbers are very small, relatively speaking. But if I look at the previous year to 2025, the numbers are twice as much.
Correct.
Can you share some insights there?
So I'll have to go back to our threshold is pretty low for reporting injuries. I mean, when you look at the state statute for what a physical injury is, it's like substantial pain and protracted disfigurement. I mean, it's a pretty big thing. Our threshold is way less than that. So we've had some folks, again, when we bring more officers to a situation, to try and get someone into custody fairly quickly, right? Because the longer it goes on, the greater the risk is for injury to not only the folks that we're encountering, but to ourselves. But when you bring more people to an incident, which what you saw here, you also have the ability, you have the potential for more people to maybe have an injury. And so we saw some of that, whether it's just spraining something. I'd like to think that, all of our young folks are, but some of us are getting a little older. It's a little easier to get hurt. So there's some of that. But again, we try and be overly cautious in terms of our reporting. So there are times where people are like, I wasn't injured. We're like, you have a scrape, mark it as injured, because that's the right thing to do. We'll say it, even though all it took was a Band-Aid to get you back up and running, but we want to make sure. So I think because we're bringing more people to it, that's probably why.
Thank you. Behavioral health specialist. I think Lake Oswego has proven that not every case requires a police officer. And I want us to get in front of having a full-time person and not share that person with other jurisdiction when there are enough cases that we can justify that. So we don't fall behind the curve and we're in front of it. So it's a comment. I think I'm also one of the counselors who keep pushing chiefs and say, do you need more people? Do you need more people? So that one, he pushes back very nicely. This one, I think we need to stay ahead of it and make sure that we don't mix the type of calls again, because we have made a huge improvement to get here. Last but not least, Chief, I think I'm more prouder than you are about the police department, because I'm on this side and receiving some of the interactions. I run into most of your officers, and probably 90% of them don't know who I am. But when I start having conversation with them, They're amazing, they're nice, they're polite, they're courteous, they're caring, and I'm very proud of our police department.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And your comment on behavioral health is duly noted.
Contrary to you, most of them know me because I'm a nice guy, and I have coffee with them, and
I have a chart just for you, just somewhere.
and I have their hat. Where's Chief Johnson? Yeah, I have their hat. It's everywhere in Europe, and I have their badge. Yeah, we're not talking about that.
Did you get a tattoo? You said, I have their badge.
Yeah,
Not a badge.
yeah,
It's a shoulder pad.
and I will show you the text I told you that I was going to publish in research on police. I finished it today. It's so funny today. I'll send it to you.
Yeah, thank you.
So, yeah, good. And, I think as a policymaker and an elected official, when you don't get calls complaining about employees, it means you are fine. No one, we don't get any email complaining about the police. Am I right? Like, honestly, no. None, which means you're doing a wonderful job. On the contrary, even people are saying, I think they're not aggressive to give more tickets, like people driving in the street, the scooter people, like the electric bike folks and stuff like that. That's the complaint we get, but not, no use of force. I just, I have the privilege to get 2 times this presentation with the youth leadership and now. And I have the privilege of seeing the drone flown many times, see the dog, the canine. That's why I say I'm cooler than you. So, so driving uninsured in 2025, I didn't see it. In 2025, there was no driving uninsured. The text.
Oh, it dropped down below, so they just did the top ones. So
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, but okay, so this isn't it
Better.
it's a good thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that is a good thing.
Yeah, so I'm really happy. And like, honestly, I think not we add more people, but the mental health specialists, behaviors, we need to have more of those. Like, because it's very important. There are as a police officer, we're not trained to, there's some mental crisis. What can you do? They can be aggressive. They can behave in a way that create drama. So when we have someone who specializes, they can talk to them. So I think when we talk and see what they're doing, I'm very happy about that. I think it's one of the best things we've done to have that behavioral specialist helping the police and also on LOCOM, it's also very, everywhere you go, you talk to as a counselor, you tell them, yeah, you're using our LOCOM. And that's why we said we were gonna go and annex one city next door. So.
Portland?
No. Yeah, we have 48 officers. We are gonna buy a tank and then we'll do the job. So, thank you. It was a joke.
Thank you,
Merci. Thank you for your work. Thank you. Yeah.
Councilor Willa.
I agree. I'm going to put lots of positive comments on you, but they've already said it. I'll get straight to my point. Out of the total of the stop reports, do we have any idea who's local and who's not? Like, who are residents and who are not residents?
So we do. We don't explicitly, because the data that is captured is supposed to be anonymous.
Oh,
But every field that the stop report or the stop program can collect on, we have made mandatory in our CAD system. So when an officer makes a self-initiated contact, one of those fields is the zip code of the driver or the person that we've contacted. So there is some of that, right? And obviously, we know that we have a lot of folks that obviously live here in the community, but then travel through the community. So
Right.
But I don't have that exact number here for you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No, it's just, I'm just curious because I'm just trying to figure out the educational piece. I know that in local neighborhoods, usually they're local people or they are Amazon drivers. And I think a lot of them speed through and do. And I'm just trying to get a feeling of what kind of educational outreach we have that might show a trend that we're having our residents have less violations and our outside people maybe having more, if that makes sense. Because it's hard for us to educate people outside of the community, but I didn't know if there would be trends on something like that.
It's a great question. I've kind of made a note here to see what we could maybe go back and take a look at, and I might be able to get some information to you.
That may be something that we can get from CJC, which is where all the data goes to. And then I know that was one of the categories that they were interested in was pass-through traffic. So we may be able to come back with that.
Because I think that would help our communications team to figure out who are we targeting. The other one that I was really impressed with was our drug slide, where the hard drugs, cocaine, whatever, heroin, whatever, were like at zeros almost, and then it was just mostly unknown. And I know that we had more drug things, but I'm very happy that it was a trend where almost, I don't know, it's almost a non-issue, which is, it's a nice trend to see, I guess, is one of the things. And last, I guess, is these are phenomenal reports, and you should be extremely proud, and we are very proud of you. Is there enough activity in Lake Oswego to retain people?
There's plenty of activity. And
Okay.
I think our officers, when you take a look at the numbers, you can see that they are very, very good at finding locations within the city that bring that work to them. There's plenty to keep people busy and interested. But I'm awfully proud of where our numbers are. And I'm not looking to bring in additional crime to our city, so.
No, I just want to make sure that we have enough for them to retain them so that we're not too common perfect, if that makes sense.
That makes total sense. Part of, one of the things I didn't talk about in here was the partnership I talked a little bit about with TriMet, and one of the things that we're able to do by working in some of these other work groups, task forces, what have you, is to give our officers some exposure to different types of work, which then it helps educate, it helps train, it brings that back to our organization when they rotate back here, and it creates new opportunities for other people to rotate into those positions. So for those who are really looking for that, they get that taste. But I will tell you that I think there are a lot of people who really cherish what it is that this city has to offer, which is exactly what we've been talking about. And I think those folks are the long-term Lake Oswego police officers who are committed to working in a community that has everything this community has to offer.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Councilwoman. I noticed and Chief, this might go to your comments earlier, but the self-initiated stops went up quite a bit this last year. We see the speeding, overall the citations are not, they're overall they're up, a bit. But the speed, is that just the nature of not having the motor, that the patrol officers are more likely to do a different, less likely to sit in one place and do speed enforcement? Is that kind of what we're?
So in my experience here, having almost 21 years, but then also being a motorcycle officer and the patrol officer, as a patrol officer, it's kind of the ancillary duty. So when you're not tied into something, you're not following up on a case, you're going to jump into that. We have some folks, obviously, that's what they love. They're going to go do that all the time. The vast majority of our self-initiated activity when it comes to traffic stops has almost historically always been a traffic unit, because that's what they do. They're going to crashes and hit and runs, but they're going out there and they are just hitting every spot that we know we have crashes, and they're also then responding to every extra patrol area and staying pretty busy with just that.
Right.
And it's way easier to do traffic on a bike.
Yes. So but we see the self-initiated calls up, but still a decline in the traffic or in the speed.
Right.
It's like, how do you square that?
Well, so some of that, so as a motorcycle, it's really easy to kind of park yourself almost anywhere. So when you get some of those areas that maybe that there's an issue or you're responding to someone who's called in, it's just really easy to kind of hide out in a spot because you don't eat up a lot of space, whereas not necessarily so with a patrol car. So it's a little bit more difficult. We do have moving radars in a lot of the cars now. That's something that we've done over the last few years. I really appreciate Officer Boggs and now Sergeant McGaley's efforts in those, and they work to get those in there. So you get folks that, they'll do it, but they're moving, right? So a little less likely than just, I know my spot, I go to my spot, I sit there, I'm going to hit there, I'm going to grab 10 motorists right off the bat, and I'm going to move to the next spot.
Makes good sense. So it really is the motor that's more likely to issue speed, to do speed enforcement.
More likely. And I think the other officers, what you're seeing is there are other reasons for those stops because they're involved in other activities that draw their attention, and those are the reasons for the stop. And it may be that they're focused on problem locations. They might be trying to solve a neighborhood issue, and those stops are done for things other than for speed.
Right. That makes good sense. And I appreciated your comments at the beginning, Chief, and addressing Councilor Verdict's concerns too. I mean, people really feel that traffic safety most viscerally, in the neighborhoods, where they're walking, where they're biking, when they're pulling out of their driveway and whatnot. And so it's great to focus on the crash corridors, of course, but to really get the results, I think that's why we hear from the residents so much. And so that effort to concentrate on both, the main arterials, but also in the neighborhoods is really appreciated. And it really does go a long way to making people feel safe. Because when we're just looking at crashes, then we're not looking at the near misses, the people that feel like they're about to they just don't feel quite safe. And the neighborhood enforcement goes really well with the millions of dollars we're investing in safe pathways, safe routes to school, as well as the reduction in the neighborhood speed, which we know has to be coupled with enforcement and education to really be viable. And we want that to be a real thing, for the community. And it's not going to be real unless we have that, that partnership. So I really appreciate your guys' efforts in getting the officers aligned, with us, all of us together as a community, and it would be helpful as we go forward when we look at the data, looking at what is arterial versus what is neighborhood. So we get a sense for where are citations happening, where is speed enforcement taking place. And I think that goes a long way too, because you never know. Neighbors don't, and they say, oh, there's no enforcement. Of course, until there is enforcement, then there's too much enforcement, But the data is great to have, because then we can see, no, there is, on these, especially those collector streets, that's where people are really, where they're not always engineered, right? They're often engineered for a little faster speed than we would like, but yet they're made for neighborhood traffic. People walk on them, kids are out there, I wanted to ask too about the e-bikes. That's a big, of course, remains a huge thing. And we've been engaged these past years on the education, LOPD with the city in general and the school district. Laws now have changed this year. Do we have anything planned education-wise on the e-bikes?
So one of the things that we're doing, I actually just reached out to the superintendent the other day, just making sure that we're still working with the school district and eliminating those e-bikes from being at some of the schools where they're prohibited by age. And those things we're still doing that together. So we're going to continue. We know this time of year, the e-bikes, we're going to start seeing more and more of them. We're still at a place where we're doing a lot of education. So when we make contact, we're not looking to cite people with e-bikes necessarily. If it ends in a citation, it does. But for the most part, we're trying to educate and really working on educating parents so that has an impact on who's allowing these kids to actually operate the e-bikes. Captain Simon was fortunate enough to be part of a work group out of the legislature focused on e-bike legislation. And I think so maybe, I don't know if you have any more insight into where that legislation headed.
They cleaned up some of the definitions in terms of what is an electric device, essentially, that you're going in there. But I think there was more work that could have probably been done in order to kind of make things a little bit safer for folks. So hopefully we'll be able to revisit that in the future. It is still illegal for folks under a certain age, but they're still out there riding. There really wasn't, bless you, there really wasn't much that was changed on the enforcement side.
They
from what I
changed
saw.
the age down to 14 for the class 1, right?
Yeah.
And that just
So
makes
you could
it
be 14 and do a class
on the
one.
class 1. The thing is, no one knows,
It doesn't take much to make a Class 1 not a Class 1.
Yeah.
no.
The other issue too is, I mean, when you go and you look at the laws and rules for e-bikes, they're actually pretty complicated, even for some of the officers to be able to look at something and go, oh, that's a violation, right?
Yes.
Or that's a violation, or that's a violation. You'd almost need to be waiting for them to go, all right, I'm waiting for you to hit 40. And once you hit 40 miles an hour, I know that's probably not legal, and so even then to be able to have an educational conversation with someone, if they don't want to stop and talk to you and you can't verify what that is just by looking at it, you can't stop them.
Right. Helmet required?
A helmet is required,
Okay, that's
but
good.
now everyone's wearing those full face ones, so you don't know how old they are anyway, so.
Yeah.
Nice helmets.
It's difficult. I mean, our folks are working real hard. They're trying to do what is it they can, and we've got plenty of calls where we've sent folks out that, usually it's a neighbor who has said, hey, I saw this is where they went, and this is the house they went to, and so then we're going and then visiting with the parents and talking with folks there, if we can do that.
Right. It is challenging. Of course, I know that the thinking behind the reduction in age was, well, great, now we can provide education to these, because we couldn't educate a 14-year-old before because it wasn't legal for them to ride the e-bike, but now it can. But of course, this was the state's thinking. They have provided no program funding or anything, really. They just said, well, hypothetically, we could educate. So I don't know is there anything, and well, city manager and I were talking with, about the judge. Judge Lindgren has mentioned too that these violations, could end up like a moving violation, then it impacts this kid 14, 15. Not necessarily, they don't probably even know. The parent obviously is buying them a
Right.
bike. Then they have a traffic thing.
Tell
So
them
it's
their
good.
kid
So
can't
the
get into
warning thing-
college. and
They
then
can't, well, yeah.
They'll stop them.
So is there anything, so I can appreciate what she's doing, because it's crazy. You don't want to mess up their driving record when they don't even have a driver's license, and it's really half mostly the parents' fault. Is there anything locally that we can do? I know Happy Valley is also similarly situated community, high presence of the e-bikes, big topic there like it is here. Is there anything that we can do?
That's a great question. So I posed a question to the chief a little while ago, and it's probably the most captain-y thing to do, but I'm going to propose additional things with words. But I wondered if there is some things we could do locally, much like in our ordinances, that maybe would allow us to have a little bit more teeth into addressing these issues. And that's certainly something that would be interesting to explore.
I think we can look at some of our neighboring communities and see what communities have had ordinances that have been successful, and if any, and I think that would be a place for us to start.
Okay, especially for the under 16 kids, if there is any way to, levy more enforcement perhaps against the parents, than the kid, because we are hearing that. I mean, we've been talking now, we're going to educate for years. Now the community's like, how's this education working out, So at some point, I think we do have to, but again, we're not trying to jam up preteens with, not being able to get insurance, turn 16, but I don't know. Anything I think we can do education-wise too. People, I just had a stack of envelopes from kids they had to write as an assignment, and they're all about how e-bikes, every single one of them, and they want younger, faster. I mean, because it's great. They love it, but it's just this horrible combination of big cars, roads not made for this, and then little kids on these tiny bikes. And they don't have lights. None of them. I mean, they should be like a motorcycle, always on lights. I mean, anyone who cycles know you have that light on regardless of the time of day, because otherwise you can't be seen. I'm just shocked these bikes after dark, no lights, and it's like, what is going on? How? And that's nothing we can do about, but on the manufacturing side, that they're even allowed to sell that is crazy.
Well, I think, I mean, we're very much open to what it is we can do to help educate the parents and get, because that's the first step. So much like how you talked about getting, and even just for traffic enforcement, getting into the neighborhoods.
Right.
I know I heard it quite a bit, and I know my officers hear it quite a bit, which is when they stop someone for maybe rolling through a stop sign in a residential neighborhood, they're like, oh, I live right here, and I call you guys because I complain about this all the time. I'm like, you just ran it. So, we run into that quite a bit. So like, whatever, I mean, we're always open to ideas on finding ways to further educate people to get the word out. Because like you said, there's going to be a subset of folks that they didn't know that their child's not supposed to be able to have this. And there are some that just go, yeah, I know you're not supposed to, but here you go.
Yeah. I've seen that even in the kind of, the discourse in Happy Valley is similar to that too, like, well, at least they're not playing video games. Like, well,
Right.
okay, but I mean, is
I
this
think
the other
there's some-
option?
yeah.
But most of them are not exercising
I mean,
because they're
they-
not pedaling. So I mean, it's kind of,
It's a little, yeah, it doesn't have to be those two things.
Right.
It's not the only options. And just one final thing, are you seeing just noticing that use of, when you address this a little bit, the use of force and the behavioral health, related, are we seeing a lot of repeat, folks on that side, or is there a real effective use of the behavioral health specialist and kind of?
That's a great question. So something to consider, and I'll try and get to that a little bit. I'll probably be speaking more anecdotally as opposed to very concrete on the data. So even though there's a behavioral health factor there, it does not mean that maybe our behavioral health unit was there when that actually occurred, but we recognized an issue. So sometimes we get called to, there's a disturbance, there's a domestic disturbance, there's a theft in progress. It is relayed as a crime, and we get there, and I think our folks, because of the training that they get from Amber, the training that we send them to as part of working here as an officer, they start to recognize what are the underlying causes of how we got here. They're still going to deal with the offense, but then they're going to realize, hey, there might be a behavioral health component, and if Amber is working, then they reach out to her. They'll determine whether or not this is someone who's a repeat offender or not, or sorry, a repeat person that we've come into contact with. Some of that is, like we have a handful of those. But again, because the numbers are so few, I don't know that we're always using force on the same person. I don't think, that's not what I've seen. It is a lot of different individuals.
And we're actually collecting that data on the calls for service. It's something that we're collecting off the clearance. So if we're having contact with people, that is one of the issues, one of the things we're trying to indicate from the call itself. So we're probably going to indicate those on far more incidents than what our behavioral health people even respond to.
Okay.
Right.
It's good. I know, just in general, like that's the cycle, and kind of conditions in the
Well,
state.
and if they're not, if the behavioral health unit is not on when the incident occurs, like I said, our officers do a really good job, much to the chief's point, of going, hey, you need to be aware of this incident that we had involving this individual. I think they could use your help. And so we follow up after the fact.
Great. Well, again, thank you both very much for the report, and to everyone in the department for the continual good work and all the trust that the community has in you all, the work you do daily. And we are here to support you, and that we know the biggest thing is the recruitment and the hiring, and we know that's not unique to Lake Oswego, but this is a great place to work. You are two great leaders to work for, and I know it goes a long way, and the people that we've been able to bring and retain here in Lake Oswego. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, colleagues. Two good questions. Okay, last business item on the agenda is the 2026. We have an open seat down here. Who wants to sit next to Councilor Burdick? It's a hot ticket. It's a hot ticket. Madison Thiesing, our Deputy City Manager, we're just going to talk about the kind of selection process, application around the vacancy. Thanks for being here.
Of course. Mayor, City Council, I'm Madison Thiesing, the Deputy City Manager. I am here to briefly go over the proposed plan for filling the City Council vacancy from Councilor Rath's resignation. To begin, just for context, the last time we have filled a City Council vacancy was 2015, and so we have not done this process in quite a while. Since then, we've adapted many practices about having clear expectations about roles, having defined criteria that we're looking for, so that not only do applicants know what are the desired values and skill sets that we're looking for, but then also it guides the conversation for council as well. So with that, after having conversations with the mayor, we've identified 3 key attributes that we would really like to have emerge through not only the application process, but the interview process. And then I'll also go over the timeline and questions for council. So with that, to go over the evaluation criteria, so the steps are going to be that we will have a application that was included in your packet. We will invite people to apply. From the applications, there will be scoring, which then we will hopefully narrow down the list for interviews out of respect for time, not only for the interviewees, but also your time, because this will be a special meeting we will have. And then from there, we would appoint someone from that interview process. So the idea is that these 3 skills, core elements is what I called them, will carry from not only what's in the application, but through that interview process and what you'll be evaluating on. These were pulled from not only what we are using for how we hire, the boards and commission appointments, but then also City Recorder Hawkins did research with other cities and seeing how are their interviews and applications structured as well. So what we would propose is that we're going to be looking for related leadership experience, the ability to prioritize this commitment. As you know, it is not only attending meetings, but it's prepping for meetings. There's a lot of work that's going to be taking place in 2026, not only with the work plans, but we know there's going to be site visits for wastewater treatment plants. We know you'll be hiring a city manager and a city attorney. So not only understanding the expectations for those 2 meetings, but all the things that will be happening for this year as well. And then the last core element that I think is true of not only the city council, but this organization, is being a productive collaborator and being a member of a team. And so these were the 3 proposed evaluation criteria. As I shared, this is what you will see in the application. So trying to distill that through the questions, and then the interview, which was interview questions that were also included in the packet. So very simple, but we actually want to just name it what we're trying to what we're seeking for as a skill set. The proposed timeline to fill the vacancy as soon as possible, again, recognizing the council has a lot on your plate this year to get through. What we would propose is today we're reviewing the candidate process. As soon as Friday, we would open applications for 2 weeks. That would then allow council to review the following week after the boards and commissions process, to then narrow it down and then have ideally the announcement of who would be selected for interviews May 5th, with then the special meeting, then the off week of city council in May, and then to swear in by June 2nd. It's tight. City Recorder Hawkins and I have talked about this process, as well as with City Manager Pro Tem Peterson and Assistant City Manager Megan Phelan as well, of we can do this, we are prepared to do this. This would allow us to get someone in as soon as possible to support you all as well. So for the questions for council direction, again, this was included in the council packet along with all the materials, is really just to make sure we're on the right track. And this is how you envision this process, is that we would have a screening through the application. We would then invite people back for interviews and then appoint from there. And so the questions for council and hoping for council direction is, one, are these evaluation criteria appropriate and what you had in mind for a short-term 6-month appointment? Second, are you comfortable with also the proposed process, but then also the narrowing down by the mayor to bring back a short list based off of the volume of applicants? And then 3, given the timeline, is there any specific outreach asks or suggestions you might have for city staff?
Councilor Afghan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Do those duration, are they dictated by any laws or ordinances, or we just decided 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and so on?
We did it by choice. There's nothing in ordinance or code. That was a choice to most effectively use the limited time you have to get someone in as soon as possible without also overextending during boards and commissions interviews that are going to be taking place at the same time.
Okay.
If you would like this extended out, we can do it. We can also shorten it. I also want to acknowledge that we do have a few counselors who are going to be on vacation and out of town as well during that same time period. And so it was also a scheduling too.
Thank you. On the first of the three criterias, do boards second, boards and commission, are they included in the special sessions? You go back?
Sorry, being the evaluation criteria?
Can you go back to, I think it was
Oh,
the
excuse-
second, one more? There, prioritization of commitments. It says regular twice monthly meetings and special sessions. Being the liaison to boards and commission, is that part of the special sessions? Or do we need to add that?
I can add that.
Oh.
The answer is no, it's not there. We
No,
need
it
to
is,
add.
yes, that's part of the, yes, and
Special
other
sessions.
2 monthly meetings, special sessions, and other meetings.
Yes, I can include that.
All right, thank you so much.
Counselor Woodland.
I'm all good with this. The only thing that I know we want clear and objective and transparent and everything. So just to get this right, so we would receive all the applications. The 6 of us would go through those, we'd rank them, and we'd give them a score, and then you would take them all, and then you would add up all the scores, and then we would have a list of the scores, right? So, I mean, I'm fine with Joe doing the recommended interview shortlist, but I'm just wondering, just to make it transparent, would we want to just say top 5
We could do that.
scorekeepers, just so everyone knows that there's no, nothing, I mean, I don't know. Does that make
Yes.
sense?
So do you mind if I share kind of the thinking of why we
Yeah,
said the
if
recommendation?
you could do that.
We don't know if we're going to get 25 or 3 applications. And so the idea was allow us to receive the applications, rank them, similar to what we do with boards and commissions where the mayor is able to have a review of it and then make a recommendation to council of how to proceed. If we only have a handful, that can be then the council's decision to say, we are going to interview all. What we were trying to avoid was sharing all the names who applied out of respect for their privacy and also the ranking. We were also going to try to make that less, trying to think of the right word in that moment.
Transparent?
Transparent, but respectful of people's privacies.
Okay.
And so the short list, we could say, if you wanted to just say, we're going to be planning to invite, planning being the strong word, 30% of the applications to come back for interview. We just don't know if we're going to have a huge pool or a small pool, and then being respectful of you'll have to do interviews at that point, and the interviews could take 40 minutes per candidate. And so just thinking about timing with that.
Right. Well, I just know that when the school board had something like this, they had 27 applicants for the position, because everyone goes, geez, I can serve without doing a campaign. Wow, that's like the dream. So I was just maybe saying up front to say, we'll just take the top 3 candidates or the top 4 or something, just so that everyone is clear on whatever. Is that? Candidates, yes. Okay, so just the top candidates. So, okay.
Yeah, good question. Yeah. Madison, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for putting the process together. And everyone likes the timeline.
Yeah, timeline's good. Yeah.
Okay, it's great. So we'll start advertising.
We'll go live Friday. And so a press release will go out on Friday. It will be shared out. We'll get it in the lowdown next week as the time. And then what I'll ask City Manager Peterson is that we'll include it on your Friday email, so that word of mouth is going to be our best asset in this short timeline. And I can also email boards and commissions and neighborhood chairs, but word of mouth will be our
I
best.
think what's going to really be a kicker to get the recruits in is that we have to list the stipend that they get each month so that they know that there's just this huge
I
amount
thought
of
it was
money.
sitting next to me.
Oh,
The whole thing.
yes.
We'll put a piece of paper there. This could be you. See yourself here. Okay. Thank you, Madison.
Yes.
That's great.
Thank you.
So much. Thanks for bringing this to us. All right. Information from council. Does anyone have any information to report? Councilor Afghan?
Mr. Mayor, I guess there is a little correction. Councilor Afghan is not an Arab American. Councilor Afghan is Iranian American. And I'd be proud to be an Arab American, but I didn't want that confusion or perhaps creating a
Thank you,
situation.
Councilor Afghan. We're very sorry for misidentifying you
I
in
can
that way.
be Persian, Iranian, Arab, Jewish, Buddha, you name it, I'm more than happy to be. We're all humans.
You are you.
I am you,
Oh, we
yes.
know.
Thank you.
Easy. Oh, that was your update. Okay. Anyone else have any? No?
Can't top that one.
No. City manager?
Mayor and council, I just wanted to draw your attention to an email that you got from Chief Johnson that I also had included in one of my first letters to you. An invitation on May 7th to the wildfire presentation, 10 to noon, and then the partial evacuation of the assisted living facility. So just take note of that if you want to attend. Love to see you there.
And I just wanted to add on all the bad news that happened in the world. Artemis sent beautiful pictures of the moon that humans have never seen, and they did something no human has ever done. And I think for that, I can go to bed not very, having anxiety of having my president insulting people on Easter. I think that solved all the problem for me. I'm very happy that America is moving forward in science and is moving. That's where we should focus our energy and not fighting wars. I am against wars, and I'm saying it, no wars, but more Artemis, more exploration.
Thanks, Councilor Boop. All right. Thank you, everyone. We
We'll
are
put our next team together to go to the moon.
Yes. Wouldn't that be great?